with Q&A. It's the final, what is it, 8 days before the 3-day event. And we're somewhere around 500 people right now in terms of people, new people who are registered, plus obviously a bunch of people from Mastery. So the count is going to be about 600 in terms of amount of people coming to the 3-day. We're already at 500. VIP is completely sold out, so no more VIP tickets available anymore. If you haven't registered for whatever reason yet, make sure you do it ASAP, because the amount of people we can sit in the room is obviously a limited amount of people, and then we're going to outgrow Waterford Convention Center. So if you haven't registered, andrewholmesevents.com. That's andrewholmesevents.com. Go register yourself, and then if you want to bring a spouse or you want to bring a friend or somebody as a complimentary ticket, it's completely complimentary. You just have to let us know when you get the emails for registration and everything, and we will reserve that for you. Having said that, let's jump right into it. So the question number one was, if I bought a property in May this year for $321,000, did a rehab loan on it, and just got it appraised for $665,000. Would you keep it or would you sell it? So number one, I don't know how much work you did to it, so I don't know what the numbers are. But let's just assume you bought the property for $321,000 and you did say $80,000 worth of work to it, or $100,000 worth of work to it. So you bought it for $321,000, you did $100,000 work, so that puts you at $421,000. That's your all-in cost. Plus you've paid interest on the loan, plus you've paid some carrying costs, so on and so forth, right? So your all-in cost into it is going to be $321,000 buy price, $100,000 to rehab it, and your rehab cost may be a little bit less, maybe it'd be $80,000. I don't know what the number is. I'm just using 100 as a round off number. But what you have to do is you have to look at what's my all-in cost. So purchase price plus rehab cost plus any cost that you have incurred to service the debt. You may have incurred electricity, heating, cooling, insurance costs, interest costs, any of that stuff. So let's just say any of that, all of that put together adds up to another $15,000 or $20,000, whatever that number is. So now $321,000 for purchase, $100,000 for rehab, $421,000 plus $20,000, so $440,000 is what you're in the deal for. So $440,000, $441,000 is what you're in that deal for. So at that point, what you have to look at is, okay, on $441,000, in this case, the person says that, Andrew, I got a loan on it, a rehab loan on it, and I just got the property appraised at $665,000. So now I'm assuming in this case, because this person hasn't said anything otherwise, they say I bought a house. So I'm assuming it's a single family house and it's not a 2-unit or anything like that. And so in this particular case, what I would do is I would do a flip almost 99.9% times, unless this is something where you can get a super high rate for a Airbnb, unless you can get a super high return where you're very, very, very confident. Otherwise, I would do I would basically sell the property, and then I would take that money and redeploy that money. So what that looks like is this, and I just did some rough calculations because I'm just kind of doing it on a rough way, that even if you pay a commission, say 4%, 4.5% commission is what you're paying, you negotiate your commission a little bit, you pay your selling costs, so on and so forth. So that's going to end up on a $650 sale. You're going to end up getting hit for another $30,000, $35,000. So now your purchase plus your rehab plus your carrying cost plus your sale plus everything put together, you're going to end up somewhere around all-in cost in the deal. All-in cost means all the costs associated with that transaction, somewhere around $480,000. Right? That's what your number is going to be. And assuming you've done this in a reasonable amount of time, reasonable meaning 4, 5, 6 months, right? If you've carried the property more, you're going to pay more for the property. So you're in the deal for $480,000, you flip the deal somewhere around, say, $660,000. I mean, think about that. That's a couple $100,000, $160,000 profit, $180,000 profit. Now, the problem here, what you're going to have is you're going to pay a bunch of money in taxes, right? That's one issue that you're going to have, but there's just no way to avoid it in this case. But you can certainly pay your taxes, now redeploy the capital, over and over. So you can definitely do that. And this is a strategy from time to time that I have used. Like generally, I like to buy properties and I don't like to sell them. That's just a fact of life, right? I want to be on the buying side way more than on the selling side. But from time to time, when I started in 2008, 9, 10, I did a bunch of flips, close to 100 flips at that time I did, because I wasn't keeping rental properties. That was not in my mind. And then 2011, we started it. So in 2011, the way we used to do it is for every 3 rentals that we would keep, we would do 1 flip. 3 rentals, 1 flip, 3 rentals, 1 flip, 3 rentals, 1 flip, right? And the reason I was doing flips is because that was money for me to live on. And I lived on that money. If I had any excess left over, I would put it towards buying more rental properties, right? And then it became 5 rentals to 1 flip, 5 rentals to 1 flip. Then it went to 8 rentals to 1 flip, right? In the last year, as you guys have heard me talk about, I bought a lot of rental properties. A lot of them are expensive properties, meaning they're all in A areas. So even though they're in A areas, I put a lot of them towards Airbnb. With all the Florida construction going on, with all the properties I was buying here, I was like, oh my God. There is, even though I have all this money tied up in all of these properties, a lot of them I had paid cash. So then I had to go back and pull a little bit money out, because it's not that you don't have money. It's just that if you're buying that many properties, your cash flow is going to run low because you just bought a lot of properties. And by the time you get them performing as an Airbnb, it takes some time. It may be a 4-month, 6-month, 8-month gap. So what I decided was I'm going to take 4 or 5 properties this year and this year into the next, and I'm just going to flip them, right? Like the Bellwood flip, I made just now about $54,000 on. The property in South Holland, I flipped. That one I made, I think 62,000 on that one. The property in Elgin, I have one coming up. Probably I'll make about 55, 60 in that one. There's another one in Wheaton we're going to put on the market. Maybe that one is going to be 85 to 100, maybe a little bit more, but somewhere in that ballpark. And so what my thought process was this, that do I need necessarily money to live on for me? I don't need that from the flips, right? I have other funds for that I have coming in. But if I'm going to keep buying properties at the pace that I'm buying, and you need to have, like for me, anytime I start getting in accounts less than $600,000, right, cumulative, because there's about 25, 30 accounts, and then Rahul operates a whole bunch of accounts. So all the properties I own with Rahul, the way we do it is he says, hey man, I want minimum of 20 to 30,000 bucks, ideally 30,000 bucks in every single account. Those are rental accounts. Now you might say, Andrew, that is excessive. So if you have 10 accounts, that's 300,000 sitting there, it's dead money. That's how I don't manage those accounts. Rahul runs those on a day-to-day basis. That's how he feels comfortable with it, right? So God bless him. I like to have, because I have a lot of accounts that I'm operating, I like to have an average of about 600 to 800,000, and I feel more comfortable with it, because you can't have, when you own as many properties as I do, you can't have these accounts run down, right? You can't just go and you're like, oh my God, you're complaining about that kind of money. And I'm saying it with straight face. One time in my life, I was like, oh my God, how many zeros does 800,000 have? It's a good problem to have, but it's still a problem. What I'm trying to say is this, that there's nothing wrong. Even though I don't like it, I hate selling a property. I just do, right? Because my philosophy is I should be owning more and more and more, right? And I take pride. Some people take pride in the size of the flip that they do and the amount of profit that they make. I take zero pride in that, right? To me, if I have to sell a property, I'm pissed off. I'm just pissed off. Right? Unless the property doesn't make money, if it's a bad property, that's something different. But otherwise, my philosophy is I'm meant to own a lot of properties, and they're meant to have low balances. This is just my philosophy. So anytime I'm doing a flip, I hate it. But sometimes in order to grow, you use a flip as a tool to basically live on, meaning put food on the table, that sort of thing, because you got to do something. Or in other cases, you do that flip to deploy that capital and get a good and basically build more because you did a flip. So it's strategic. What you're doing is you're strategically doing a flip. And that's what we were doing, was that 3 rentals, 1 flip, 3 rentals, 1 flip. So used to be that I would, at the time, what I would do is every month, I was like, hey, on an average, if I can pull out, my house debt wasn't that much. I didn't have any car debt. And I was like, hey, if I can pull out $4,000 or $5,000 from so if the flip made $30,000, what I would do is I would only take $4,000 or $5,000 out of it to live on, and then I would take the rest of the money, deploy it back into real estate. Then I would again do that, deploy it back into real estate. Because what happens is when you're accumulating a lot of properties, right, you're going to have frictional costs. What does frictional cost mean? Well, when you buy the property, there's going to be some cost. When you sell the property, there's some cost. There's some cost for carrying the property. That money has to come from somewhere, right? If you're going to build a big business in real estate, right, there's always going to be frictional cost. And the more the transactions that you do, the more the frictional cost. Well, where's that money going to come from? Has to come from somewhere, right? So you have to produce it. And the way I did it was, because I was not selling real estate, I would do flips. I would make more money there. And this is important to understand. A lot of times this doesn't get talked about. That, guys, even if you, let's just say you did 3, 4, 5 flips, right? You had a good year doing flips. You made $250,000, $300,000, right? You're not a real business person if you're not taking some of your profit and deploying it back into your business, right? You have to, at some point in your life, say, hey, I'm going to live on less, and then take more money and put it back into the business, right? Because if you're not going to deploy it back into the business, then guess what? Your business is not going to grow. It doesn't matter if it's today, right? We do these big events, all this big stuff. People are, oh my God, Andrew makes millions. Oh yeah, it just comes in, right? There's a money tree. We go and shake at the back of the room and it just comes in. That's not how it works, right? I mean, like, we have a big 3-day coming up. Just for the room alone, just for the room for 3 days, you're going to spend somewhere around $100,000, $110,000 before we walk in the door. That's just how it is, right? I mean, coffee for 3 days, that's $35,000, $40,000 just in coffee, right? You're like, oh, coffee is cheap. Well, no, not when you're paying at the damn hotel. Because these are important things to understand, that whenever you're building a real estate business, like any other business, and I know on the internet, on like YouTube and all this, people, it's easy, it's simple, anybody can do it, you don't have to even do the work, we'll do it for you, right? And it's stupid, right? They're talking to that monkey brain we all have. We want it to be true, but guess what? It's not true. So this is a great example where I think in this particular property, this person can flip the property and do this. I mean, Ms. Marta, particularly, last year and a half ago, she did a lot of flips. The market was great. We're coming out of Corona, and boom, 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 boom. She could do a lot of flips. So then that year, she didn't do as much accumulation. Now at the end of the year, she's like, oh my God, Andrew, I got to pay a lot of taxes, right? So she got hit very hard on taxes. That's just how it is. But then she went back into the accumulation mode, because what it does is flipping or wholesaling helps you build more if you need capital because you got to come up with capital from somewhere. Now, you can get all the private money loans, you can get all the hard money loans, but the frictional capital that you need, right, that has to come from somewhere. And a lot of times people forget that. So it's important to keep that in mind. The next one is, this is a question, and the other day somebody had asked this question a different way. It's like, well, where do I find the banks that will give me a portfolio loan today? Right? The best place to go find the bank list is just go to Google, and basically you can type in list of banks in blah, 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 Illinois, right? Or you go to a website, it's called Bauer Financial, Bauer Financial, Bauer Financial. You go there, and then when you go there and get all the list of banks in Illinois, throw out all the banks that are like the Wells Fargos of the world, Chases of the world, US Banks of the world, any big banks, right? Any big banks. You're only looking for the ones that are small community banks, that are small, they have 4 branches, 5 branches, or any credit unions. So then the important thing to realize is, let's say your property is in Barrington, right? So like I have a small 3-unit, 1-bath, 1-unit property in the old part of Barrington, downtown Barrington. So if I go to a lender that is, let's say, south suburbs of Chicago, portfolio lender. And I'm like, hey, I got this property in Barrington. Generally, they're not going to want to fund that property, not because I don't have a great deal. I may have a great deal. They're not going to give you a takeout loan on it because it's out of their footprint. We'll discuss a lot more of this. And a lot of times this used to be me, I would go to a lender and they would turn me down. And I wouldn't understand the reason. And I was too embarrassed about myself because I'm like, oh my God, I got turned down. I must not be that good, or there's something wrong with my property. I would always take it personally. Whereas now, if somebody says, oh, no, Andrew, what do you mean you're not going to underwrite this deal? Why? Right? There has to be a reason. Now I don't have any shame in saying, hey, man, I've done the numbers work. Why is it that you're saying what you're saying? There has to be a reason behind it. Now, if you don't have a product for it, that's different. Right? It's like if I go to, you go to a Mercedes store looking for a Rolls Royce, they're like, hey, we don't have it. Right? There's nothing wrong with you. It's just you went to the wrong store, right? That's all it is. And this used to happen to me at lenders, and lender would say no, and I would take it so personally. I'm like, I want to go home and feel depressed. Because I'm like, oh, they're saying no to me. No. A lot of times they don't have the product you're looking for, or there are some lending criteria that you don't meet. So what happens is if you're buying a property in Barrington and the bank is from south suburbs, even though your value is really good, it's not in their footprint. Every portfolio lender has a footprint, meaning, let's say a bank is in Oak Park. They will lend in Berwyn. They will lend in Austin. In fact, if you're in Austin part of Chicago, they will be more anxious if you have good credit to give you a loan. Why? Because for lending in Austin, they get bonus points. Because why? It's going to be considered a more challenged area. Everybody in Oak Park is going to want to borrow the money. It's easy for them to find clients there, right? So they get more bonus points and they want to do lending to you. So now Berwyn counts the same way, or Cicero counts the same way. So you have to understand this strategically, that when you go to a portfolio lender, right, then they have a charter. These chartered banks, they have a charter that we're going to do lending in our footprint. Now, does that mean they're not going to give me a loan in Barrington if the bank is in Berwyn? They will. So I have a bank in Berwyn that is willing to do that loan for me. Why will they? Because it's a community bank, and I have a long-term established relationship with them, right? They always call this relationship lending. What does that mean? Well, that simply means is you open a bank account with them, keep the bank account. Let's just say you have a small business over there. Then they want you to have some deposits with them. They want you to have some relationship, or they want you to have done a bunch of loans with them and you're a good customer for them. So I have few banks like that where I've done a lot of business with them for the last 5, 10, 15 years. So for me, they will step out of that box. It's like I was looking for the airplane financing, and this one bank we do business with, and I called Joe, and because the aircraft was too big for the small banks and was too small for some of the big banks, right? They wanted big jets, right? And it's somewhere in the middle. It's not too small, it's not too big, it's in the middle. And they're like, well, we want a turbine to be financed. And so they said, Andrew, we'll do it. I'm like, well, I didn't know you guys do aircraft financing. And they're like, no, we know you guys, we know, we have a long-term relationship, so we will make an exception. That's the cool part, like the building. I did the loan for the office building through them. Same thing. They're like, hey, we'll give you a loan, or you should get an SBA loan. Apply for both. You qualify for it. So SBA loan is harder to get. If for some reason the SBA hoops you can't jump through, we'll go ahead and do the loan for you. With us, we require a little bit more down payment. SBA will require a little bit less down payment, right? So what I'm trying to say here is this. Those types of banks, these small banks, you look at the footprint. So if you are going to invest, let's say in Austin, then you look for a bank which is relatively close by to that particular area, because they're more likely to do much more things for you. Now, once you have an established relationship, then a lot of times, like I've gone to Joe sometimes and I'm like, hey man, I want to do XYZ, right? I want to get a loan on portfolio loan on 5 properties. He's going to say, hey, listen, you have $1 million line with us. Now go to such and such. And they'll always refer you to a sister bank. And they'll call the vice president from that bank and go, yeah, these guys are good to go. Boom. You're not going to have any problem. So that's how I would go look at some of these banks. That's where I would find the list of these banks to be able to do that. Now, so what specific banks, so this is a question that goes moves forward, what specific banks are giving lines of credit for business? Come to the 3-day and I'll give you a list of the specific banks. How do lines of credit work? So how does the line of credit work? The way this line works is, let's say, hypothetically, you have a property. The property, I'll just use the Barrington property as an example. So when I got it appraised, I bought that particular property for $90,000. I did about, with the work, with the foundation issues, all the stuff, about $150,000 in it worth of work. So I bought it for 90, 100,000 in work. So I'm in the deal for about 250, 260. The appraisal on that property after it was all said and done came back at 390, right? So of 390, I could borrow about 70 to 75%. Generally, these banks like to do about 70%, generally. This is different than the regular commercial loan. Hold on one second. This is a wholesale deal. Okay. All right. So this person is trying to get a deal for the property that's worth about 255, 260 for 150. So this is a good deal. They should buy it. Anyways, so what the numbers would look like is something like this. On that property, the appraisal value was about 390 times 0.7. So 273, right? So they would give me a refinance up to 273. Now, whenever these credit lines are done, what is a credit line? What a credit line means is that you basically have equity in the property and they're going to establish a line of credit. So basically they'll give you a line. They open the line for 270, right? That line is meant to be borrowed against when you need the money. That is not the same as a loan. So what is a loan? A loan is when you're trying to borrow, say $300,000, the bank gives you $300,000, you make 30-year payments for the next 30 years. That's a regular loan, right? A commercial loan, residential loan, doesn't matter. With the credit line, what they want you to use it for is they want to use it as a cash flow line, meaning you have a $300,000 line, you pull 50 from it, you pay 50 back, you pay 20 back, you pay 40 back, then you again pull 100 out of it, you pay it back, it's sitting there, you're not making any payments when you're not using it. When you use 100,000 of it, you pay 100,000 payments in interest payments. When you use 50,000, you only pay that. You need 250. You borrow 250 out of it, then you pay that back. You can pay partial back. You can pay whatever amount you have pulled out. Each month, you're going to be billed based on that amount. So every month, your mortgage payment is going to change depending on how much you're using or how much you're not using. And a lot of times what that line is used for, so generally that's going to be a line which every year they'll basically ask you, hey, can you just fill out a personal PFS, personal financial statement? And we want to make sure you're kind of where you were last year. Right? It's not like last year you're making this much money and this year you're in a hole. So that's how that kind of works. And a lot of times whenever it's against the house, it's against the equity against the property. So it's generally going to be, and they typically will keep it open, assuming everything is okay with the bank, assuming everything's okay with you, they'll typically keep it open. They're not going to close it out on you. But a lot of times it's going to be kind of, a 5-year type of a balloon. Generally is some sort of a balloon is going to be attached to this sort of thing. And the payments are going to be about 25-year amortization. They don't necessarily like it if you just borrow the money and don't pay it back for, 10 years. That's not what this line is meant for. The way to use this line is you use it for, let's say, rehabbing, right? Or let's say you're doing a couple of flips. Great. You use it for that, pay it back, and then again use it. Then again pay it back. Then again use it. Again pay it back. So you're basically kind of using it like a rubber band, right? You're using it. When you don't use it, it goes back. Then you use it again. So that's how kind of the credit line works. And it's a phenomenal thing for a lot of people. And another thing that you have to think about is that if you're thinking about a credit line and you're thinking about it to use it for your construction, for your rehabs, this time at the 3-day, we'll talk about this a lot more, because even there was a time in my life when I had credit cards and I made a mess out of it. because I was buying a lot of stocks on it. And as you can imagine, it worked well for a time, and then it didn't work well for a time. And so there was years where I did not use a single credit card at all, because once burnt, twice you're careful kind of thing. So, but a lot of times, and this is something we haven't talked about as much at Mastery, and you'll see that change because I'm making that change on my end, that basically what we're doing is we're establishing lines of credit besides a commercial loan. All of us use commercial loans for buying properties or for refinancing properties. But what we haven't done, and I haven't talked about this because I wasn't doing it, now that we're switching over. So all your credit cards, meaning your, like for me, I have a personal Amex Platinum. So a month I'm putting about $250,000 to $300,000 in terms of charges on it. And because it's all the construction, it's all the stuff we're buying, all the expenses, be it fuel expense, with jet fuel, all that stuff, right? The 3-day expenses, and it's a massive amount. I mean, think about it. If against your personal name, you have a line, you have a credit card. It's not a credit card, it's a charge card, right? So end of every month, you have to pay it in full. Right? There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You have to pay it in full. And now it takes a hit on my credit, because even if I'm paying the whole amount in full, if on the 15th it hits my credit and basically it shows, oh my God, Andrew is using $90,000 on his credit card, right? So, and it's a no limit credit card, still that hurts my personal credit. And so now you'll see us doing that change, which is instead of putting those expenses, be it for business expense, be it for whatever it is, be it for construction, that going from a personal card to a business card purely, right? And that's a big change that we're making, and that will help. Now, you would think I would have known this all these years with owning the amount of properties I did, but I didn't, right? I was jaded about this whole business credit and all this nonsense, because a lot of times the people who would talk about this were people who I did not find credible in terms of how they were conveying the information. But recently, this was something that I started looking into just because of the amount of expense structure we have going out a month. And so that much on my personal credit makes no sense, right? So now we've started establishing business credit cards that do not report to my personal credit. So there may be a $90,000 balance on it, which gets paid off. So I tend to pay it every week, so that I don't have huge accumulated balances. But for especially a lot of people that need $20,000, $30,000. That's very common that people need that because they're using that towards construction. So you may be buying materials, supplies, whatever it is, right, that you're buying. You're paying vendors, and that goes on your credit. That should go on a business credit card, should not go on your personal. If you're from Mastery or if you're going to the 3-day, please do not go start opening business credit tomorrow. Right? We don't want you to have a bunch of inquiries suddenly. We'll go through this. We'll have a big conversation about this, how to do it so that you don't just create a massive, you don't have a bunch of inquiries suddenly on your credit. So just bear with us till next week, and we'll talk about this in a lot of detail. So just, keep that keep it at the back of your mind for now, and then we'll discuss that next week. Now, there's another one that I want to go through. Another thing I want to talk about really quick. So today, actually, I signed the contract. So there's this property that I was bidding on. And this is something that I get a lot of times from people. Like, Andrew, I can't find a property. I can't find a property. I can't find a property. Right? And guys, listen. The properties, and this is something you've heard, and you probably don't want me to repeat it, but there are properties that are out there. I'll give you a perfect example. There was one of the auctions I was bidding on, and I have been bidding on this property at least for the last year, right? I counted how many times I've placed a bid on this one property that I kept bidding. I bid on that property 28 times, right? This is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, full basement, a basement that can be fully converted into living space, new furnace, hot water heater. It was completely packed to the gills. And back end value on this property, minimum as a 3-2, is about $350,000. I was willing to pay, not having seen inside at all, and I had seen the house from outside. I had not gone there, spent any time. And the garage by the house, maybe the floor is all messed up. I may have to take down the garage. I'm not sure yet. Probably we're going to just lift it up and pour a complete new floor, including the foundation on it. Probably is going to cost me about $8,000-9,000, something like that, right? So I have to keep that in mind. Now, till now, without seeing it, I was willing to pay $150,000 on it, right? I got to see it day before yesterday, because I've been bidding that many times. Day before yesterday, I got that property for $116,500. $116,500. And here's why I'm saying this. I'm not saying this to, oh my God, congratulations. That it really doesn't matter, right? The point is, and this is a reminder to myself, that a lot of times, like, what did it cost me to bid? Zero. Right? I'm just putting a bid on. Every time the seller rejects it. Every time I'd call them and go, hey man, can we make a deal with the seller? Can we make a deal with the seller? And boom, guess what happened? They couldn't sell it. They were playing games with it. And finally, they reduced the price. And they reduced the price to $116,500. And I'm like, listen, I'll pay full price. I'll take it now. And it's done deal. Right? And the reason why I say that is this is happening. There's another property I just got in Lansing. There's another 8 of them that I just bid on. And out of the 8, I think I'm going to get 2. I'm not sure yet. I'm working on it. But my point is this, that a lot of times people want to be multimillionaires with real estate, and they just think, right, that it's easy. And here's the thing, guys, think about this, right? If you give 40, 50, 60 hours to your job, and you're here, you're trying to get here, don't you think it's going to require at least some effort if you're going to succeed with real estate investing, right? I mean, and this is something important to keep in mind, because, if you really want to succeed, you can't go and just give up. The other day, there was somebody here. I have a tremendous amount of respect for this gentleman, but, and he's like, Andrew, oh my God, this, it's just not working for me. I'm like, okay, how many properties did you go to? Well, I went to, 2 or 3. Okay. You want to become a multimillionaire with real estate. How is going to 2 or 3 properties? How is that going to solve it for you? I mean, that's like you saying, hey, I want my employer to pay me millions for the year, and I showed up at the office 3 times this year. I mean, how the hell do you expect, right, to make that kind of money, to develop that kind of wealth without having this, attitude that, hey, I'm not going to give up? And it's not necessarily hard work if I'm bidding online on a property, right? What did I do? Now, did I like it when every single time I've been being turned down? And I get turned down all the time. I mean, there's a property in Westchester I got, and then they cancel the contract on me. Somebody else from Mastery gets it for $10,000 lower than I did. What can I do about it? It is how it is. I don't like it. I want to fight with them. But my point is this, that a lot of times, guys, last 2 months, there have been more loan documents that Gina's office has done than ever before in the history of Mastery. And people are like, oh my God, the market's higher than ever before. Well, yeah, it is. But guess what? That doesn't mean there are not deals that are happening. There's a lot of deals that are happening. There's a lot of things that are happening. The question is, are you making it happen? Right? And it's just a numbers game. I seem to get lucky whenever I work, right? Whenever I'm not working, I don't seem to buy that many properties. It's just that simple. If I put in more effort on the events and things I do, they seem to be better. If I don't put in as much effort, then it's always pulling teeth, right? And it's like no different in real estate. So it's important to keep that in mind, that there is no such thing as luck. At the end of the day, the more you do, the luckier you get, right? And the reason you get luckier, because you're just in more places at the same time, right? You're just looking more, so you're going to bumble into more stuff. There's a guy from Mastery, James, right? James Riley. And hopefully he'll come, won't be shy at the 3-day. And literally, this guy could not spell real estate if his life depended on it, right? And I mean it sincerely. And he's like, Andrew, where do I look for properties? I'm like, MLS. Where do you live? He lives in a tougher part of of Chicago. And my point to him was, I'm like, man, listen, you live in a tough part of Chicago. That's just how it is, right? Don't go anywhere. Look for a property right where you live. All you're looking for is a property that is worth this, needs work, and you're buying it for this. He's like, how do I know if I found the right property? I'm like, you don't have to know, right? Just go get it under contract. If you think it's half decent, right? The value is 250 and you're getting it for 80. Get it under contract, immediately bring it to us. Let us do the evaluation with you. He literally comes here. He's like, oh my God, man, I put up $1,000 and his hands are shaking. He's like, I don't know, Andrew, I'm going to lose the money. I don't know what to do. Right? He's first time. And I go through the numbers. I'm like, dude, this is a property that I could pay $120 for this property. You have it at a great deal. Now, if the property was no good, we'd just kill the deal and get the earnest money back. No big deal, right? And guess what? Did he make a lot of money? I don't know. You judge. He made $10,000 on that deal, on one deal. And he still doesn't have a clue. So now what do? Like, take the contract, give it to Gina. Let her close it, and you get to do the wholesale. My point is, sometimes if you put in effort, you can bumble into a deal. Probably one of the best things that James did was he just went and looked, finds something, and I think he went to 25, 30 properties before he found one. So if you look at his productivity, probably not the most productive use of his time, but it's a lot more than he was making at work, right? And a lot of times it's just that sheer tenacity. Having said that, again, the website is andrewholmesevents.com for the 3-day. It's 17th, 18th, and 19th. It's coming up next week, guys. So make sure you register. If you have any friends, family, let us know if you've already registered. If you'd like to bring them bring a guest free with you, that's perfectly fine. But VIP at this point is completely sold out. So the regular attendees is still available. And andrewholmesevents.com. Thanks a bunch, and we'll talk to you on Friday. Oh, and before I go, I will remind everybody that tomorrow is the vendor showcase right here, right at the office, 520 East 22nd Street, 6:30 in the evening, vendor showcase. So there'll be a lot of vendors here. So we'll